Brighter Light, Darker Shadow by Backing into Infinity. Read by Oakshadow 5. This episode contains the last 2 chapters, so let's get right into chapter 32, A New Raid, Part 2. Summary. The raid concludes. Trigger warning for this chapter: there's more violence than typical in this chapter, and it is more graphically described than is normal for this fic so far. Additionally, there are some character deaths. Ahmed rocked anxiously on his heels. His job in the operation was to take out All for One, and since the recon teams had failed to pin his location down, that meant waiting in between the 2 locations to react as soon as the villain appeared. His radio crackles as the teams move in. Basjanus leads a team of heroes to neutralize the Nomu warehouse, and the Endeavor's strike squad approaches the League hideout. His thoughts wandered to his successor. The explosive teen had begged to be allowed to participate, and him and his friend were now part of Endeavor's team. The pair reminded him of himself and Night Eye in the past, the headstrong limelight hero paired with the analytical investigator. He was glad that his successor had found such a good support, and perhaps even more glad to see such growth in young Bakugo. The teen had come a tremendous distance in terms of attitude, and Yagi was truly proud of how much his protege had matured. For once in his decades-long career, he finally felt at peace with his eventual retirement. He had been fighting evil for so long, and rarely trusted anyone in his lengthy career. However, young Bakugo had such drive and passion, and was so dedicated to his own self-improvement, that Yagi felt he would become a hero to equal the number 1 hero himself. Even if the younger blonde was not yet an ideal hero, still crass and rough around the edges, his recent strides in taking advice meant he was sure to let himself be molded into the perfect candidate for number 1. And young Midoriya was no slouch either. His successor's Night Eye equivalent carried himself with the typical gruffness of an underground hero doing work, but brought a sense of levity and chaos to his daily life that Yagi wholeheartedly appreciated. The hero world could be a bit serious and grim, and making people laugh and marvel was every bit as good as saving them with a reassuring smile on your face. His radio crackles again, and a blood-curdling scream tears out of it. Yagi leaps into action, identifying the channel as Basjanists and sprinting towards the Kamino warehouse. He arrives in seconds, nevertheless too late to save the number 4 hero from a grisly death. The scene is bleak. All for One stands cackling in the destroyed shed of the warehouse, a swath of ruined buildings before him. The hero squad sent to raid the factory has seemingly been reduced to smears of blood on the floor, a small pile of blue carbon fiber marking Basjanist. All for One! Yagi bellows furiously, dashing forwards and engaging him with a flurry of blows. All for One bats him away easily, suspiciously so. The masked and scarred villain disengages with a chuckle, and suddenly shimmers. An illusion falls from his body, revealing the villain in all his glory from decades ago, looking healthier than Yagi has ever seen him. A cold pit forms in his stomach. Well, Toshinori, All for One's voice drips with menace. What do you think of my new look? Or, shall I say, my old look? You demon! What have you done? I found a cute little girl with a time reversal quirk. Well, technically a causality manipulation quirk, but brutes like you never do sweat the details. She was quite disoriented after her imprisonment, and gladly used it on me to restore the poor old man to his former glory. Unfortunately, the quirk did not mesh well with my collection once stolen, so I had to return it to her. That, alongside my villainous attitude, made her quite upset, and the little pest has been frantically trying to escape ever since. The centuries-old villain brushes a bit of dust off of his suit, white hair glimmering unnaturally. Sounds like your other team will rescue her, though. She is perfectly safe in a room at the bar. Unless my successor kills yours, that is. Such an unfortunate coincidence that they got isolated together. A real shame Endeavor was so easy to outmaneuver. Yagi cries out a battle cry and charges. The battle between the 2 titans is furious, and All for One takes some significant hits. But Yagi can feel himself fading quickly, and the Demon Lord doesn't seem to be flagging at all. The old injury in his side radiates excruciating pain, and All for One seems to unerringly strike it over and over. The fight lulls for a moment, Yagi panting and clutching his side. Somewhere on the edge of the battlefield, he hears a police officer frantically radioing Endeavor. All for One chuckles softly. Toshi, you've fallen so far. Where is the valiant hero that struck me down with his final blow? The Demon Lord pauses for a moment, then snaps his fingers. You chose an excellent successor, though. It seems he just defeated my own pick. A shame. I thought the Shimura boy would do better. Oh, well, I guess I will have to strangle Bakugo Katsuki with my own hands after I put you down. Yagi reels from the revelation that Shigaraki was a Shimura, shaking his head and choosing to ignore it as he dashes forwards again. The niggling doubt follows him throughout the next exchange though, and when Shigaraki appears in a pile of grey sludge, the resemblance was so stark that Yagi can't help but falter. All for One capitalizes swiftly, slamming a vicious blow into Yagi's injury and digging his fingers in. The fingers turn into claws, then dripped molten lead into the wound, then jab and dig and burn. Yagi gasps, falling to his knees, and vomiting onto the ground as All for One cackles maniacally. Before All for One can strike the finishing blow, Endeavor arrives on the scene. The flame hero blasts from the sky wreathed in an inferno and blasts the demon lord away. Moments later, Gran Torino, Midoriya, and Bakugo arrived. The two students help All Might away so he could recover, and a field medic starts to apply a healing quirk to his wound. Gran Torino dashes across the field, leveling the injured Shigaraki in twice in a second before dashing at All for One to help stall. The villain roars in frustration and swats Gran Torino out of the sky. A writhing tentacle snaps the elderly hero's back, and a casual eye-beam tears through his yellow suit and the chest inside of it. Endeavor cries in desperation, whipping tendrils of fire and putting up walls to protect the police. All for One swipes at the flame hero with a tendril of water, and Endeavor counters with a lasso of flame that boils it to steam. A laser blasts out, and a carefully placed heat shimmer refracts it away from any vulnerable areas, letting it scorch along Endeavor's ribcage. Air cannon is rendered useless in swelling eddies of hot air, one of which helps redirect a helicopter mid-combat to save it. Molten lead sloughs of Endeavor as his body's temperature resistance is too high for it to affect him. A flaming slab shears off the demon lord's luscious hair as it turns to snakes and lashes out at the hero, and a flame-powered punch blasts him back across the battlefield. You impetuous fool! All for One roars in fury, his arm bulging up with power. Yagi calls out a choked warning as he staggers weakly to his feet, but he is too late to stop the punch. A sickening thud resonates around the ruined and burning ward as All for One shoves his oversized arm through Endeavor's torso. The flame hero coughs weakly, missing half his chest and his right arm, then falls to the ground. Yagi, rage revitalizing him alongside the field hearing, blasts at All for One as his body glows with the energy of 8 chromatic suns. The spirits of One for All radiate out from him as he slams the smug demon lord with a smash, catching him off guard as he prepares to monologue. Terrain blurs around them as Yagi chains a series of vicious punches across the ruined ward, smashing All for One through buildings over and over as he releases 6 years, or a lifetime, of righteous fury. Yagi pants softly, his body steaming and sizzling as he stands back where they had started, All for One's limp body at his feet. The villain looks like he had never healed at all, bruised and battered, with no hair or nose and a caved-in face. The demon lord chokes and splutters, smelling to the very end as Yagi's buff form abandons him. You win, I suppose, All for One says weakly. Even my successor is down. How unexpected. The worst villain in history lets out a weak rattle and goes still. Yagi stares down at him, tears streaming down his face as he sees the mutilated bodies of his fellow heroes out of the corner of his eyes. He slowly raises his head and shakily points at young Bakugo, standing horrified at the edge of the destroyed area beside his friendly shadow. You're next, he intones sullenly. That was kind of the last chapter of Red Alert Darker Shadow. Now we'll continue on to the epilogue chapter, which is titled A New Epilogue. Summary. The epilogue. Things wrap up. Months later, Izuku makes his way across town to meet with a new friend. He boards a train from the station near UA, browsing the news as he rides. Anchors are reporting on the recent resolution of the now famous Todoroki case. Toya Todoroki had dropped all charges in light of his father's heroic death, deciding the media slander that had followed the discovery of his existence and the court case was punishment enough. He had taken custody of his youngest sibling and was currently working on getting his mother released from a hospital. According to Monoma, Toya was a decent guy and Todoroki liked him well enough, so Izuku figured that was another happy ending. A few alerts on his Twitter feed notify him that Kachan managed to go viral again. After the Kamino Ward incident, the explosive teen had gained a cult following as people began to hail him as All Might's successor. The blonde was living up to the hype, taking lessons from a variety of heroes, and was already considered a shoo-in for #1 someday as they entered the second year. Apparently, Some reporter had captured an adorable candid of him and Hitoshi on a date, the purple-haired insomniac scowling as the blonde planted a wet kiss against his cheek. Izuku exits the train and walks through a sunny park to make his way to his destination, a small cafe. As he walks, he waves and smiles at passerbys. Everyone cheerfully waves back, but no one recognizes him. Izuku had not been catapulted into the limelight like his friend, and that suits him just fine. His work as Tonight Aid's agency would be much more difficult if he was constantly trending as a hashtag. He did have some social media presence, but it was as a series of #knife cryptid posts instead of anything that could be linked back to him in a recognizable fashion. He makes his way into the cafe, known for its odd blends and being one of the only places in the city to import Yorose's favorite Gold Tips Imperial tea. His friend is waiting for him at a table already. Her blonde buns swing slightly as she bounced up and down and wave. "Hey, Mi-chan," Izuku says brightly as he takes a seat. "How's it going?" "Great! Freedom is treating me so well," Himiko Toga says happily, newly released after almost a year of rehab and checkups. "Principal Nessus said he might let me enroll in US Gen Ed course if my good behavior keeps up, and then I can see everyone every day." "Awesome! I can't wait to see you more," Izuku says, ordering himself a fancy tea, eyeing Himiko's coppery blend with distrust. "So, what do you want to talk about?" "Well, you know how all those fan accounts keep thirsting after me ever since someone found footage of Katsuki and I at the mall, and dug up my redemption story? Yeah, I have an alert for your hashtag just like I have for Kachan. Well, partially to put a stop to them, and partially because I think it would be super cute. Do you want to start dating?" Himiko says, a little bit of nervousness filtering into her voice as she fidgets with a small, dulled knife. I really like you. I do," Izuku says, flustered as always when confronted with genuine emotion. "You know I'm asexual though, right?" "Of course, silly. I don't care. You aren't aromantic after all." Himiko giggles and covers his hand with a smaller one. "Besides, dating isn't a sex thing. It's a knife thing." Izuku smiles, placing his other hand over hers with a grin. Somewhere in Musutafu, Katsuki Bakugo, future #1 hero and living explosion, shivers in existential fear. That was the last 2 chapters of Brighter Light Darker Shadow. Those were really good chapters. Like chapter 32 with the conclusion and all the hero deaths. I mean, what the frick? Best Janus died, Endeavor died, Gran Torino died. What the frick? And then the epilogue chapter. It was so cute. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this podfic of Brighter Light Darker Shadow. And I hope I see you all for my next podfic. Bye!